Hello, I am Nazeeg Haneshian from Horizon Weekly, and today we have the privilege to be with Senator Leo Housakos. Senator, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me on.
Senator Housakos was appointed to the Senate by Prime Minister Stephen Harper in 2008. In 2014, he was elected Speaker pro tempore before being named Speaker of Senate by Prime Minister Stephen Harper on May 4th, 2015, with unanimous support from both the government and opposition leaders in Senate. As chair of the Standing Committee on Internal Economy, Budgets, and Administration, Senator Housakos has been the forefront of the Senate's modernization in recent years. He is currently a member of the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Trade and chair of the Standing Committee on Rules, Procedures, and the Rights of Parliament. Senator, today marks the 39th day of the war since Azerbaijan launched their aggressive attacks to the population of Artsakh, all in the midst of a global pandemic. Since September 27th, the indigenous population of 150,000 Armenians in Nagorno Karabakh have been faced with intensive attacks by Azerbaijan, with recent reports confirming the backing support of Turkey and hired mercenaries. In a recent interview, you compared this unjust war to David versus Goliath. Could you share with us why this issue is so important to all Canadians?
I think this issue is important to Canadians. I think this issue is important should be important to people all around the world. We live right now in turbulent times. We live in an era of disruption. We see it even in some of the great democracies of the world. Populism is growing. There's calling into question of our international institutions, and the model of government in the Western industrialized democratic world is coming under fire, under question. And some of it is legitimate, some of it isn't. But if we're going to reclaim that legitimacy, we have to start having an attitude of principled foreign policy and becoming responsible international players in the arena, which Canada has always been in the past. Canada was a peacemaker, a peacekeeper, and I find over the last few years we're deviating from that traditional role that Canada has played. Now, I've said that in the past, that this is a battle between David and Goliath. This is a conflict zone in Nagorno Karabakh, and we have clear aggressors from the international community that are coming in to exterminate, to displace 150,000 Christian Armenians that have been living there for centuries. They have claim to that land. This is not some kind of, the opponents, the aggressors say that it's a state that is a mythical state. No, it's a state that exists there for 700 years before Jesus even walked on this earth. So at the end of the day, there has to be some defense of people and their democratic right. There's been now 2 sovereign votes, a referendum in that place where the people are asking for their independence. So who is Azerbaijan or Turkey or anybody else to call into question their sovereign will to self-determination?
Since September 27th, Azerbaijan has targeted civilians as well as civilian infrastructures, including hospitals, homes, schools, churches, and cultural centers. There have been 3 ceasefires brokered by Russia, France, and the United States, all of which have been ignored by Azerbaijan. On October 5th, Foreign Affairs Minister François-Philippe Champagne announced the suspension of arms supplies to Turkey. Armenian defense officials and several eyewitnesses have found Canadian components from downed Turkish drones. Specifically, the attack drones are equipped with a state-of-the-art camera and target acquisition system produced by L3 Harris Westcam in Burlington, Ontario. This equipment has resulted in the killing of innocent civilians and damaging civilian infrastructure. This is currently under investigation by Minister Champagne. Do you have any updates on this current investigation, and do you believe that Canada is doing enough?
Nazeeg, on your first point, let's be clear here, ceasefires don't work. Not in a situation where you don't have 2 equal conflicting forces. You have Azerbaijan being supplied clearly militarily by Turkey, both in manpower and in technology. And you have an instance now where we've seen 3 ceasefires being ignored literally minutes after they were agreed upon. The end result, of course, you're going to have casualties on both sides. You're going to have civilian casualties on both sides, because at the end of the day, the Armenian people are going to have to defend themselves from the aggressors. And that is the sad reality. And if those of us in the international community are really interested in saving lives and being just and fair in terms of this conflict, we're going to go that extra step and recognize Artsakh as an independent state and tell all international parties to stay out of the lives of these people in this particular region. In regards to your second question, I find the Canadian government, Minister Champagne and Prime Minister Trudeau, to be the ultimate of hypocrites when now all of a sudden they're calling for an investigation to figure out how Canadian L3 Harris technology found their way into Turkish drones and how Turkish drones found their way into the hands of this invasion by Azerbaijan. It's hypocrisy. We know how they found their way. Either a Canadian agency gave an exemption to these Canadian companies to sell this technology and provide this technology, or the Prime Minister, when he had his discussions with President Erdogan in April, and transcripts show that this issue was brought up to the Prime Minister by Mr. Erdogan, clearly the Prime Minister granted an exemption. And typical of what we've seen from the Trudeau government the last few years, they don't take accountability for their actions. They shouldn't have done it in the first place. There was a ban put into place last October by the Trudeau government in selling military equipment to Turkey. There was a reason for that, because of Turkey's egregious behavior in Syria. Since then, we've seen Turkey become belligerent in the Aegean, pushing back and have come on the verge of war with Greece now since the summer on countless occasions. You still have Turkish vessels illegally occupying drilling sites off the coast of Cyprus, not to mention the fact that Mr. Erdogan and Turkey have been ignoring international calls for them to get out of Cyprus now for 5 centuries. So the Western world has buried their heads in the sand. They've allowed this belligerent tyrant to continue to push the envelope in his support of the Islamic Brotherhood and his blatant and public declarations that this is nothing more than a modern day attempt to regain the foothold the Ottoman Empire had once upon a time, which they themselves were an empire created by genocide and invasion. And now the Western world, for nothing more than commercial alliances and geopolitical reasons, are allowing for what potentially might be another massacre of some Christian Armenian people, just because they're in a territory that a bunch of powers for various reasons want to divvy up or want to conquer. I've gone on and on. I'm passionate about this because I see the injustice. And if countries like Canada and Prime Minister Trudeau don't bring Canada's foreign policy back to a position of principle and standing up for what is right, we are in deep trouble. And this period of disruption that we're seeing now around the world will only get worse. I'm a student of history. I graduated from McGill University studying history. So I've learned one thing through the years. If you don't push back tyrants and dictators and those that are encroaching upon basic rights of other human beings just for territorial gain or growth in their resource capabilities or their wealth or their narcissism, those people become a runaway train, and it takes far more effort down the line to stop them.
Unfortunately, see history repeating itself today.
100%. Unfortunately, that's the case.
And Senator, on Tuesday, October 28th, you introduced a motion and called upon the government of Canada to recognize Artsakh, to condemn Azerbaijani Turkish aggression, as well as ban all arms to Turkey. Please share with us why this is the most important step forward.
As I said earlier in my comments, for me, ceasefires won't work. Negotiated settlements haven't worked. The only thing we can do is respect the wishes of the local people who have expressed it through a referendum not too long ago, and give them the right to self-determination, and have the international community make it clear to the bullies that we are going to defend their sovereign right to self-determination. And I think that issue will resolve the problem. The second element to my motion is I'm calling on the government of Canada to respect the ban. A ban that, if it was respected in the first place, we wouldn't have Canadian technology. And this LR3 Westcam technology, as we know, you mount it on a drone and it gives striking capability, laser striking efficiency and capability to these drones to be able to attack in darkness, to be able to identify targets in a most precise fashion. So when the Azerbaijanis with the Turkish mercenaries bomb, for example, a maternity ward, the truth of the matter is indirectly the Canadian government is responsible for that. And that's why I said in my speech in the Senate, Mr. Trudeau will have blood on his hands by, first of all, allowing this ban to be contravened either legitimately or illegitimately. If it was done legitimately, shame on the government. That means they gave them an exemption. If it was done illegitimately, shame on the government because we're incompetent and we haven't put into place measures to actually execute legitimate bans that our parliament and our government has called on.
Thank you, Senator Housakos. Thank you for advocating for human rights and justice and standing alongside the indigenous Armenian population of Artsakh and their alienable right to self-determination, as well as ensuring the joint Azerbaijani-Turkish aggression against the Republic of Artsakh is acknowledged and condemned by the Government of Canada. We thank you for your time, your advocacy, and your support.
I thank you. And like I said, when it comes to principled foreign policy and to standing up for human rights and democracy and the rule of law, I think it's incumbent on all of us who have that privilege. And we as Canadians of Armenian descent or any other descent, we've all come to this country for opportunity, for freedom, and for safety. And I believe that shouldn't be unique to Canada. I don't think it should be unique to Western democracies around the world. And I don't think refugees and immigrants should be clamoring to get into these countries to get a taste of those fundamental elements. I think they should be innately an innate right to all citizens around the world, and the people of Artsakh and the Armenian indigenous group of Christians over there deserve that. So I will continue to advocate. I know my Armenian friends and brothers around the world will continue to push for this because it's the right thing to do.
It is the right thing to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nazeeg. And if there's anything else you need, don't hesitate. And it was a pleasure meeting you. Pleasure talking to you.